That's what I'm going to take.
All right, let's call Committee of the Whole to order.
Oh, Wednesday, I'm sorry.
I'll first move to approve the minutes of our November 28th meeting.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And what I'd like to do, for the sake of timeliness for at least one person in this room, to dispatch of Resolution 2023-01 to appoint Chris Gordon to the position of Public Works Director. And so, without further ado, I'll first ask you, Chris, if you don't mind, offering up a little bit about yourself and some resume points and others as you see fit, and then we'll go on from there with the Inquisition.
Sure. First of all, my 6-year-old daughter is going to appreciate you letting me go first, because I'll actually be able to put her to bed tonight. So.
All right. And her name?
Kinsley.
Kinsley. Very good.
So I
You're
appreciate
welcome,
it.
Kinsley. All right.
First of all, thank you to Mayor George and City Council and Claudia and everybody for this job. I'm extremely grateful and thankful for this opportunity. I come here from the city of Shaker Heights. I spent 15 years in Shaker. Ironically, they hired me right out of college. I was an account clerk in the municipal garage upon hire, where I just processed invoices and purchase orders and things like that with the municipal garage. And then after 2 or 3 years, I can't remember, to be honest with you, I took a move to City Hall and worked for the finance department at City Hall. I worked there for about 4 years, overseeing purchasing and accounts payable for the entire city, for every department. So I got to know how pretty much each department ran, the basics to all of them, which was a great experience. And then when the assistant director of Public Works at the time became director, she came to the finance director and asked if she could recruit me back to be her superintendent, because it would be a seamless transition, she said. So lo and behold, 7 years ago, I went back to Public Works. It was like LeBron James coming back to Cleveland. Went back to Public Works as a superintendent and remained in that role until I left to come here. Unfortunately, at that time, the Public Works Director decided to reduce the staff that we had. So we had 70 total union employees, and we had 3 supervisors. So it was myself, the Assistant Director, and the Forester. And in July of 2022, the Assistant Director decided it was time to retire. He felt burnt out. So for the last few months, it was the Forester and me. So I learned a lot, to say the least. While I was there, I supervised anything from refuse collection, recycling, transfer station, ice and snow, brush collection, grounds, our yard office, fleet, you named it. We made sure between myself and the other supervisors that we were cross-trained in everything. So streets, sewers, it didn't matter. If one of us wasn't there, we always knew what the other one was doing. It was also union workforce there, so I was pretty well versed in how all that works. So coming here to Lakewood was a great opportunity. So I'm very happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being here and welcome, of course. I'll turn it over to my colleagues for any questions that you all may have. Councilman Baker.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just call you Director Gordon, probably. It's best. But so I've appreciated you in your first couple of weeks of work, very responsive. One of the things, the position that probably interacts most with council is the Public Works Director. Mark Papke could probably tell you that for his time that he was acting. We got lots of questions. Folks come to us and then we go to you. So appreciate your responsiveness and look forward to that continuing. The one thing, it sounds like, and I think Shaker Heights is in the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. They don't have their own wastewater plant. So I'm curious, how you approach, overseeing that division. What's your kind of philosophy there in the sense that that's probably the only big difference between Shaker Heights and Lakewood is that we manage our own wastewater.
So great question. I approach it as like I told the mayor I'm going to go on a listening and learning tour for a while. And it's really just listening and learning as to how everything operates. I think Mark will be the first one to tell you, I probably have asked him enough questions in the past week that I think he's good with questions for the next 5 years. And I've asked him everything about anything. We've gone out to the wastewater treatment plant, to HRT, and I've asked to just go on basic tours. And one of the things I tell him is, just tell me as if I have absolutely no idea what's going on, and make it as simple as possible, because that's where I feel I could start. And it's a good start that way. And I think as the director, if you have good people in place, people you trust, people that know what they're doing, and you learn from them, it's the best way to do it. Mark's been a great teacher. He's obviously invaluable to the city. We all know that. I've leaned on him quite a bit. I've asked him a lot of questions about it, whether it's a rain event or, where the water's going, where's it coming from, all those types of things. I think it just comes down to just learning the basics and then going from there.
And one more question, Mr. President? Yeah. What is your experience, I'm not sure, in Shaker Heights, with, and I'm sure Mark, our engineer Papke will be a part of this, but, as far as like public contracting goes, are you used to design, bid, build projects, or do you do design, build, any construction management risk, kind of like what's your?
Yeah, so in Shaker Heights, we had an assistant director of infrastructure that oversaw all of the construction projects for the city, but him and I worked hand in hand on RFPs, on bids, on pre-con meetings, anything that came along with that. So I have fairly good knowledge with all that, obviously. And then I did handle all of the contracts with the law department with Public Works as well, originating the contract, reviewing it, making sure everything was there, and then knowing the next steps, so.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Bullock.
Thank you, Acting Director Gordon, probably soon to be direct, I guess until Tuesday, you're Acting Director. It's been nice to get to know you, and a couple questions. So first, $56.5 million is the budget in Public Works. I was trying to tally up the total number of employees, but it's a lot. It's got to be the biggest in City Hall, or at least rivals the police department. So your role is a lot. In addition to, agree exactly with what Councilman Baker just said, that you're tied for the first, or you are the first in terms of public interaction with the public. So no pressure. In addition, we've had some chance to talk a little bit about how sustainability is a major theme. We're about to have a climate action plan that's going to even more formally make that a major through line. But really, putting that on the side, with this many employees and this much institutional memory, and it's not as if Public Works does one thing, you do many, many different things. It's innovation and leadership and training. And after the listening tour, which I'm glad that you're doing, it's the guidance or the systematic improvement and supporting our team to improve that really would, I think, be welcomed by the public and certainly by me, because I think people pay attention to Lakewood. They really care, as you can see, about the lengthy meeting we had, just about one subtopic of your responsibilities. And so, so they expect a lot of us. Would you say that your experiences and your perspective you bring to the table is mostly from an engineering perspective or an operations perspective or a financial perspective? I did hear your background, but I'm just curious as to how you would describe your own engagement.
So I would say my experience is more operations and also resident council interactions. Obviously, we have Mark here, who's very well versed in engineering, who's a reliable source. I think the biggest thing that needs to be understood is, as the director, you put managers and supervisors in place to oversee those departments, and the communication is the word that I keep pushing to all the guys and ladies in Public Works. We really are focused in on communication, keeping me in the loop, keeping me in the know, keeping the mayor in the know, keeping city council in the know, should I receive an email, and just being proud of what we do. It's a thankless job in Public Works. I know that. I've come in at 2 a.m. for ice and snow. I've been with the guys on Christmas. I've missed my daughter's birthday. I mean, you name it, I've been there. So I think there's a lot of experience that I bring on that side that could really bring up that morale part, because I've been there, done that. And I think with you talking about, the number of employees and it being the largest department, you put the supervisors in place to do their job, and they need to do it to a certain standard. And they understand that I'm starting to set those standards and where we need to be. We are probably the most visible department within the city, besides police, in my opinion. And it's residents seeing their money at work, I call it. And it's perception. We need to be busy. We need to stay busy. We need to do things. We need to take care of things. And like I tell them all the time, you're not going to get thanked a lot of the time, besides probably by me or maybe others. But as soon as something happens or a problem comes up, it's immediately on our desk, and we need to be ready to react. So the engineering part, obviously, in Shaker Heights, we had a city engineer that was outsourced, so we didn't really, none of us really had to take crazy knowledge in the engineering part. I'm learning a lot from Mark, obviously, so that part was separate. But the roots of it with the union employees and residents and dealing with residents one-on-one, yeah, I would say I'm pretty well versed.
Thank you very much. That's helpful, and I hope we do thank the Public Works. I'm sure people greatly appreciate snow plowing and refuse collection and beautiful parks and all the rest too. So, thank you.
We appreciate it.
Councilman Rader?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you. You really had your baptism by fire here before us, before this committee, and got to present before us in rapid fire succession. But I was really impressed. I'm really happy. In fact, I was really happy to hear when the mayor told us that you picked somebody from Shaker. Shaker, in a lot of ways, is leading at least the east side communities, and we hope to be leading on the west side here in Lakewood. And I'm glad that we've gotten some brain trust from over there to help us. So, to one of Mr. Bullock's points, he touched on sustainability. Shaker really is leading the way in sustainability over there. Would love to hear a little bit about your philosophy of how you integrate sustainable practices through the Public Works Department. Maybe some of the things you're thinking about bringing over here, you did over there. Things you want to do here, you weren't able to do over there. It's a lot in one question. I think you can handle it. Let me hear your thoughts.
So one of the big things about sustainability in Shaker Heights that we always looked into, which I think is a great thing to look into here, is cost compared to sustainability. That's great if we want something to be electric or it's more sustainable, but if the cost exceeds the budget or where we need to be, you got to kind of weigh all the options at the time. But also doing your due diligence. And making sure you do the research that's necessary to find the most cost-effective and sustainable way. There is many different things, obviously, that Lakewood's doing now. We did EV charging stations. We did look into, we did have an electric riding lawnmower that we used at City Hall, which was great until I had to do a presentation with a local news station and it wouldn't start. Yeah, that was great. We did look into like electric backpack blowers, which could be used in certain small areas, but you couldn't really use, they weren't powerful enough to use with, large, big leaf piles, and unfortunately they couldn't be used in the rain. So I mean, there's many different things you could look into. I know we've discussed, myself and James, our fleet manager, possibility of an electric rubbish truck, but again, you got to look at the cost compared to where you stand. So I think it's just pretty much a cross comparison and just dotting your I's and crossing your T's before you make a final decision. But sustainability should be brought into it, and if it does fit within the budget and within what's needed, then great.
I'm happy you have that purchasing background as well. I think that's going to be helpful when it comes time to purchasing, making decisions about new directions. I think you're seen to be the man for the job. So again, thank you for making the trek over to the west side, joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice President Keppel?
Yeah, so I know when we met the other night, I mentioned I was excited about your communication background, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, I think that's sometimes a struggle for some folks who have public works expertise, particularly that would prefer not to talked to the public. So I wonder if you have some particular strategies that you've used or are looking to use. You know, there's, like you mentioned, you know, Public Works, I thought that was a well said about tax dollars at work, people seeing their money at work. So, but for folks to know changes, updates, what's happening, for council to know. So if you talk a little bit about those strategies.
So I think Mark can agree with what I'm about to say, that I've really been pushing communication within the department as a key aspect that I really want to focus in on. And I keep telling them it's keeping everybody in the know. And it's not necessarily the big brother talk, I like to call it, where I'm asking questions because I want to get this person in trouble. It's more or less just asking questions on general knowledge. Perfect example, meeting with the mayor for our weekly meeting this morning, just letting her know and all the other directors know of what we have going on. We pumped 5 million gallons out of the HRT building, which was, I know, a huge purchase for the city. That's something that should be communicated. That's something to be proud of. You know, we took 26 sewer calls over last week, 29, I'm sorry. That's something that we should definitely let people know. You know, with the guys that come in at night, we've gone through the city once with Cold Patch. We're getting ready to do it again. This is all stuff that I'm telling them that we need to start communicating more. And I come from the mindset of, if I receive an email from a resident or a resident were to contact Public Works, I'm big on contacting them myself if it gets to my desk, and letting them know that if they have any concerns, they can contact me directly. Because I think it makes residents feel like you care about them, which I do. And I want them to be happy and us to provide the best service we can. So, you know, I mean, I did different videos for Shaker, which I think you could definitely just put a face to a name, which was nice. That could definitely be visited down the road. And I think it's just more or less just keeping everybody in the know and updated, whether it's from Mark's construction projects or just the simple little things on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. One of the most frustrating things is when a resident reaches out saying, why are you doing this? And I have to say, I don't know. So it's always nice to get that information ahead of time. So I appreciate that proactive communication.
No problem. You can send them right to me.
Thank you. Since the left side of my left is covered, I'll look to Councilman Schachner. Okay, Councilwoman Marks.
Thank you. Hi, Chris. Welcome to Lakewood. You'll find this to be a much more enjoyable community than Shaker. But I do have to say that last summer I had an occasion to work with Public Works and Shaker on the rainwater barrels.
Oh, yeah.
And,
yes.
And you guys were so serving the public well. I mean, I was very well taken care of. That was a great experience. I would love to see more of those programs here in Lakewood. And I think one of the programs that I struggle with, and I know that Councilman Rader and Councilman Bullock have been working hard on sustainability, but I think it's in the recycling. I think people are so confused about recycling. Every time I go to throw something, I'm not sure, does it get recycled or doesn't it get recycled? Does my mail get recycled? I would love to see us have some public programs where you can just take trash and say, this is what works, it doesn't work. I mean, it would be easy enough for us to do a video that can be replayed on our city website. I think that's an opportune way to get people engaged. And really, the sustainability has to start on the home front. I mean, we could buy all the electric vehicles, but if we're not doing the little things at home that make the big difference, I think we're short-suiting ourselves. So I'm so glad that you're here on board. I'm so glad that you're committed to communication, because that makes all the difference in the world. People just want to be heard, and they don't really know what Public Works really is doing for them. So I'm very excited to have you on board, so welcome.
Thank you. Ironically, you know, in Shaker Heights, we still did backyard pickup. So that was interesting in itself for the years I had to supervise it. And the recycling industry was ever-changing there. We did postcards. We did social media blasts. I actually did do a video for Shaker Heights saying, you can recycle this and not this. You can recycle this and not that, which it did go over well. I mean, it's definitely something we could look into here down the road. And it was just basically just trying to get the information across to the residents, because half the time they had no idea. I mean, we handed out recycling buckets in Shaker Heights where we put a sticker on the side of the bucket. And if a resident called and wanted a recycling bucket, we gave it to them. And it had, on the side what you could and couldn't recycle. But I mean, obviously with that comes cost. So, I mean, I appreciate that. And I think communication is key. So we will make sure we are on top of that, I promise you.
Oh, great, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Councilman Scheckter.
Thank you, Acting Director Gordon. With our brief interactions with every emergency that has popped up in the, week and a half, 2 weeks you've been here, certainly have appreciated your responsiveness to those. My question, of course, it actually comes from a resident, and and I was like, well, we're talking to the new director on Monday. I'll ask him then. So he has strong opinions about snow plowing, and is curious of what your philosophy is in terms of any best practices in terms of routes when you have thoroughfares like Clifton, Madison, Detroit, and then you have some side streets like, I'll look at one of my colleagues would say French Avenue. You can guess who I'm talking about. When, like how many times do you go through the main thoroughfare before you go into the side street? Do you have any strategies in preventing going through and then a resident thinks, oh, I'm good to start shoveling out my driveway, and then the truck comes through and just fills it all in? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I saw prior to my employment here in Lakewood, the mayor had put out an ice and snow plan, and some of the other directors here, which I thought was a great idea. And in reviewing over that plan prior to my employment here, it's eerily similar to what other cities do. I attended many different, through the APWA, many different winter supervisor certification courses. And, it was always preached the same way, and obviously ice and snow has been going on pretty much the same way for a long time, is obviously focusing on the mains, we call it the arteries of the city first. You want to get the main roads open first, primarily for emergency vehicles, so they can get to emergencies first. Then you work your secondaries and then to your sides. Unfortunately, in today's time, you can't really timestamp when you're going to be to a certain street because, I hate to say it, but certain residents don't understand you could have a breakdown, you could be switching out crews, whatever, and you don't want to get held to a specific time that you're going to be there because, somebody could get sick, you got to switch up routes. There's so much vulnerability, but I think the focus just mains, secondaries, that's what I call them, and then your side streets, and then clean up. That seemed to be pretty successful in Shaker Heights, and I think it's something that we're going to look into a little bit further here, and being more proactive with ice and snow, which I think, credit to Sam, he's doing a great job right now in communicating with me and just being more, what I mean by proactive is just ready to go prior to the storm being here.
Thank you. My colleagues did a very nice job of covering a lot of the questions I would have asked. And Vice President Keppel did talk a little bit about PR, and you used the word perception, which is important, I think, in a role like yours, to be aware of, to be self-aware and sort of emotionally intelligent about how you approach things. You used the mower example and the mower not starting. I like that. Maybe something similar to that I'd be looking for is maybe an example of a challenge you had to overcome in one of your roles, and sort of the thought processes that you went through, whether it was on the PR perception side of things, or just on the nuts and bolts, how we get a problem solved, sort of things, and sort of what steps you took and things like that.
Sure, a few different examples. Shaker Heights, a few years ago, I was on vacation, got a call that our yard op from one of the assistant director at the time, and he was like, the company that we were hauling all of our leaves and brush to will not let us deliver there anymore. I'm like, what? I I actually had other words to say over the phone that are not appropriate for in here, but, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And he says, oh, well, he's been leaving one of us a voicemail continuously that they're having a contamination problem. And I'm like, I had no idea. I didn't even know what you're talking about. Lo and behold, he was calling a number that didn't even exist, the owner of this company. So I just took the time out there, kind of did it old school, rode out there, sat down across from a table from him, and I'm just like, just tell me what the problem is and I'll get it corrected. And he let me know what the problem was. So I came back, kind of spent a few days thinking about it, and we implemented with our grass bag program, checking each individual grass bag for contamination before we loaded it into the truck. And then should it have a contamination, we put a sticker on it that said it was contaminating, letting the resident know that, and we left it. And then we checked each individual pile of brush and leaves, and if they had contamination, we called the resident and let them know. Now, again, it didn't go over very well with the residents at the beginning because it was change. And I think we all know how change goes. But as it went on, it got better and better and better, and then the problem was gone. I had, on many different occasions with refuse, a truck go down, and you had to think on the fly, how can we get the route still picked up, but we're only down to like 2 or 3 trucks. So it's just a matter of moving trucks from one location to another and just getting the job completed. I remember another story we had switched over our refuse hauling company from Rumpke to Kimball, and they just decided not to show up on their first day. No idea to this day why. We were picking up on a Saturday. All of our trucks are full of trash. Our compactors were full. They're like, Chris, what do we do? I'm like, dump it in the backyard and get back out on the route, and we'll load it up at another time. We were able to get a hold of Kimball. They came out, and myself and a couple guys stayed late, and we loaded it up. But I think it's more or less just thinking on the fly, thinking outside the box, I like to call it, and always trying to stay ahead of the game. You know, emergencies are going to come up, and don't be afraid to look for others to help and have a meeting of the minds, because you're not always going to have the answer.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that example, including the late night that ensued as a result. Do you have an example where you wish you'd done something differently?
Wish I had done something differently. Yeah, actually I do. A lady had come in, and she was visibly upset that we had thrown away her suitcase, and she had lost her husband, and his things were in there. And the guys were adamant that we should go through the truck and try to find it, the rubbish truck. Dump all the rubbish on the ground and go through it. And I was like, we're not doing it. It's gone. I mean, it's in there. And to this day, I look back and wish we would have done it. They were all on board with doing it, crawling through what we needed to crawl through, determining by address where we were on the street and find it. And in that moment, I was like, we're just not going to be able to find it. And I really wish we would have given it a shot.
I appreciate that as well. And then you probably see this coming. Any issues or surprises that we should make, not surprises, by asking this question now so that you can let us know?
No, I mean, I got a
anything in your
minor
past?
misdemeanor in college for having a college party in 2004, just so everybody knows. My dad was a retired FBI agent at the time, so I don't think we need to know how that went over.
I'm upset I wasn't invited. But
I think others are too, so.
yeah, I imagine so. Okay, I don't have any other questions. Colleagues, do you have anything else you'd like to follow up with? Yes, welcome for sure. And with that, I'll move to recommend adoption of Resolution 2023-01.
Second?
A motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? With thanks for everybody's questions and everything like that.
And again, thank you very much for this opportunity. If any of you at any time have any questions, concerns, anything, please don't be afraid to call or email.
We will definitely be holding you to that.
I'm good with that.
Okay, good. Good. All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. Chris, thank you for your time this evening.
Thanks. Have a great night.
You too. I'm sorry, Director. Have a good day.
Chris is fine.
All right. So with that, we have 2 more items on our agenda, both of which I'd like to discuss in executive session. So with that, I'd like to move that we enter an executive session for the purpose of conferring with our attorneys for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action, and for the purpose of reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk?
Baker?
Yes.
Block?
Yes.
Keppel?
Yes.
Litton?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Rader?
Yes.
Shackner?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Are we going to move to the annex? Okay.
Did you want to invite Director Dillinger in?
Yes, and I will retroactively adjust my motion to include city directors that are present, as well as council staff.
Sorry, I missed 2 parties. I missed
Yeah, I mean, my wife. Miami Dolphins-esque. Big Dolphins guy over here.
I'll first move that we exit executive session.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Which is weird to do while in executive session, I guess, technically. Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
Baker,
Yes.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Layton,
Yes.
Marks, Rader,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Move to adjourn.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? I just want to thank everybody who came out to support the conversations, the multitude of conversations this evening on a lot of different things, and just appreciate everybody's hard work to get us to this point. On the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. We're adjourned. Thanks.